I want to share this a really incredible, to me really awesome, mind-boggling, unexpected recording that appeared on my little digital recorder that really is, even though it lasts 8 seconds, it's awesome. I have to share it. I have had this saved on my computer and on the device that it appeared about 2.5 years now. And I've been too caught up, too swept up to share it. And it's something that it's precious to me. It's precious to me. So I wanted to take a moment while it still exists, because I almost digital things, they're fragile. It's not like having something on a cassette. While I have it, I wanted to share it with all of you fellow servants of God. And it's basically, it appeared on this is the little digital recorder. This is my little Olympus that I've had since my husband died. After he died, I bought it, really just to play back his voicemails and the audio recordings that I had of him, to hear his voice. And to tell you the truth, I ended up using it in so many different ways after I actually got started unexpectedly to me, writing Christian songs. And this, what I'm going to share with you, happened during a period when I was trying to work out a song about holiness and righteousness. I had started working on a rough draft of this song back in October 2014, just fiddling around with the idea. And some songs, I can write a song perhaps in one day, but a lot of songs I have might just simmer for maybe 1 or 2 months. And this was happening with this. I had worked out a first rough draft of that song in November 2014. And I'll just play a little brief part of this song.
Purity, undefiled, godliness, perfected vessel of honor.
Well, you just heard a few seconds of my rough draft that I was working on. In November 9th, that's when I did that rough draft. And so I was living at my former house still, so I had, the house was all to myself, and I had absolute privacy. And at this time, the next month, a little bit into like 5 or 6 weeks later, I felt myself get inspired to flesh out the song more. Because what I had there was just an early draft, and I was looking to build the song up. What I didn't know, I took this little recorder with me into the bathroom. That's my inspiration station, at least it was there. It's not over here. But since I had privacy, I could just free flow, just sing raw drafts. And from that, I hoped to solidify more the continuation of the song, which is typical. What I didn't know, that the inspiration I was moved with suddenly at that time appears to have a heavenly origin. because when I took this recorder with me, it was after midnight. I'm looking over here. Well, I can't really tell here because this is like a third computer that I have transferred the file to. But right before I start my little singing in the shower, I didn't know that another recording had manifested on here. And this song that I was working on, I had named Holiness and Righteousness, and I was featuring it around the holiness and the righteousness of the Lord. And I was going to keep working on the holiness singing of the song. What I didn't know, what I discovered afterwards, that right before I started my singing session, a voice appeared. A voice recorded itself on my recorder. By itself. It recorded itself. And it said the word, a male, which I assume was an angel, my male angel, who I have recorded his voice before. And he simply said, holy. And I want you to hear it. I want you to hear this, because later on when I came back, I saw this little thing there. I'm like, well, what is it? And this is what I found out that it was. You can see that the size is really small, 8 kilobytes. And that said, so I want to open it here for you to see. Here is the actual WAV file inside of my waveform music editing software I have, Mixcraft, and you can see it, what it is. And when I play it, you can hear, he says, hear a voice actually, holy. The interesting thing is you can hear a voice like in the background, and then the termination of, well I would call mic, the mic artifacts are at a separate space of it, like a real mic. You have a voice in the background, and the artifacts of the on the mic are up close with the very end pop that you hear. See, they're not all the same level. It's like the regular depth that would be in a real recording. Okay, the recording is here. Let me just put everything. The voice saying holy in the background, and the mic artifacts ending it. And it's clearly a male voice. Clearly a male voice. See if anything else I can do to boost the voice without distorting it in any way. Okay. Output gain. This, all I'm doing is putting volume to here. Well, I said the interesting thing about this supernatural voice that is on there, it's long enough that the word fills it, but when you have it on a repeat player, like a MP3 player or whatever, it's just enough so that the word is saying holy, holy, holy. Not that it's holy, gap, 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 holy. It's like, and it done so that when it was on a loop, it would be continual saying of holy, 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 which is very interesting to me. Okay, so I thought I would, you might find it interesting to look at the waveform, the actual waveform, see it, just listen, see how it looked like. Might try to augment it, and because I'm really not a sound technician, okay, but but you can see evidence that it is a waveform. And you can also see evidence that it does appear to be a voice, not at the same, as if it was a voice being recorded, and the mic artifacts are separate to it, not the same volume. So it's not too often that you get a supernatural voice on a recorder, and like I said, it appeared by itself. It appeared by itself, and really, to me, part also of it that is amazing was the timing of it. The timing of its appearance. Right when I was about to record some rough draft singing of a song about holiness and holy and righteousness of the Lord. Just a few minutes before, I think maybe half an hour before, and there it was, all of its own self, and what it implies, what it stands for, and I really might not even be nailing it on the head in fullness, but it deserves to be showcased like this, especially if it comes from the Lord. I want to give God the full platform that He has intended for this, if anything, to build up the faith, and also to reinforce what He is, because the song I was writing was about the Lord's holiness, how the Lord is holy and righteous. So much for it being short, right? But it's just too awesome for me to, I guess, to just put it as a little blip. This really is so awesome that I wanted to profile it in fullness. Now here's the, it's a rough draft, so I'm not saying polished. But this is what I already had in place.
Purity, undefiled, godliness, perfected vessel of honor, holy temple of living stones, a dwelling place of God. Holiness and righteousness are the way of the Lord, way of the Lord. Holiness and righteousness are the way of the Lord. Holiness and righteousness are the way of the Lord, way of the Lord. Holiness and righteousness are the way of the Lord. Holiness and righteousness, holiness and righteousness, holiness and righteousness, holiness and righteousness.
That's it. That's what I had. And when the angelic voice was recorded itself on this tape, I was then trying to work out more of the song, because that's how, for me, I often work out a lot of the songs. I do bits and pieces, and actually a lot of my first efforts never even get in the end; they get tossed out. But that's what I had. That's what was in place at the time with this supernatural event happened on this little digital recorder in 2014 here in Florida and the USA. Miracles happen, angel voices, recordable, holy. This is not any evidence that these things are not figments of the imagination. They are not imaginary. The supernatural realm, the things of the Bible, are real. You cannot record fiction. Fiction doesn't record itself.